To get started on this exercise, download the interactive form folder from today's Moodle page and locate the membership application InDesign file. When you open up this InDesign file, we're going to use this as the basic template to place all of our information for this interactive form. The first thing we need to do is to place the JPEG that comes along with it. If you look inside the folder, this JPEG will be our template to tell you exactly what to place and where to place it onto your InDesign file. So jumping back into InDesign, let's go up to File and down to Place, locate that JPEG and say Open, and then I'm going to place mine off to the left-hand side just by clicking and dragging. Later on, you can move this around and even turn it off once we've finished it up. The next thing we need to do is to open up our Layers panel. If you don't see it, you can go up to Window and down to Layers. And inside of our Layers panel, you'll notice that we already have a background layer, and this is what we have all of this information on. I don't want to make any edits to this background layer, so I'm going to lock it down, then go down to the very bottom and create a new layer. And let's double click on the name 2 for layer 2, and we'll call this our information layer. We'll say OK to that. All of the information that we add will now be inside of this second layer. I'm going to return my Layers panel off to the side. For everything else that we do, we're going to be creating a new text frame for every individual section, and we're going to type out the information into those sections. Pay close attention to the formatting of the text and also the alignment and placement of everything. Your alignment and placement doesn't have to be 100% perfect. If it's off by a little bit, that's okay. But all of the information should be on there. So we're going to take this one thing at a time. The first one I'll do is the check one for a new member or returning member area. Grab your type tool and let's click and drag and create a new text box up in this top area. I'm going to type out exactly as it appears in my example. So check one. Since there's a large space here, I'm going to hit Tab, New Member, and then Tab, Returning Member. Since I'm using tabs, I can highlight everything. Let's go up to Type and open up our Tabs menu. And here's where we can set a tab and move all of our information over. Again, the exact placement doesn't really matter as long as there's plenty of space between the two. Also, while we've got this open, I'm going to change my font from Minion Pro to Myriad. The word check one needs to be bold, but the rest of it can be in just a regular Myriad type. The final thing I'll do is to make sure my words are nice and centered within this area. And all I've got to do, since I'm typing in its own checkbox or text box, is just to kind of nudge that down. Now let's work on the next one. Grab your type tool again. Let's click and drag and create another text box between the margins. This time, as I start to type out, I'm going to press my tabs and set my tabs. So for instance, I'm going to type out the word first, then I'm going to hit Tab, and then I'm going to set a tab. Then middle, Tab, and then set a tab. Last. This way I can easily and quickly keep up with everything. Also notice that when I hit return, I can type out the word address. That's on its own line. Then I can do city. Since I've already got these tabs set, I can hit Tab, State, and then Tab, Zip Code. And they're already lined up. Let's do the same for student, home, phone, tab, student, email, address. Again, I can highlight all of these. Let's go back up and choose the correct font. In our case, it would be Myriad Pro Bold. Set the size of it to be 10, and I'm also going to increase the leading to be about 25. Let's actually make it 30 lines, or 30 points for there. Now, in order to add the lines above it, we're not going to be using any of our line tools. Instead, we're going to be adding what's called a rule above. To find the rule above, let's highlight all of our text that's inside of our paragraph. Go up to the very top far right-hand corner and click on the little options. From here, let's turn on paragraph rules. With paragraph rules selected, We can turn on Rule Above and choose Rule On. We can also make sure the preview is turned on, and this is going to draw a line all the way across the area. What we need to do now is to bring it up above. So let's change the offset, increasing it to 0.125, and then change the weight of it to be, let's do 1/2 of a point. That looks pretty good. When we're done, we can say OK. And from here, now I can choose my selection tool and nudge my information down so that gives plenty of room to type it down at the bottom. Now let's do the demographics. Let's grab our type tool again and create a text box inside of this area. Also, before I get started, I'm going to set my font to be Myriad Pro, and I'll set it to be regular, and the size of it's going to be 10 points. From here, I can type out date of birth, month, day, year. Rather than setting tabs for each individual line that we've done in the past, I'm just going to type out a set number of underscores. In this case, it makes it much easier. Then we'll hit a dash. If necessary, all I've got to do is copy and paste those right there, and then copy and paste again to get that. I will set a tab for my current grade, so I'll hit Tab. Let's open up my tab palette, Command-Shift-T, and I can set a tab to place it exactly where I want it to go. In this case, I do want to save plenty of room off to the side here so I can add my interactive form later. For my next line, I will do a tab leader. So let's do name of school, colon, and tab. Now I've already got a tab set here, so I need to clear this away. For this one, it's easy. I can click and drag it off, and then I'll set another one at the very far edge. And with that one selected, I will do an underscore leader, and that'll go all the way to that end. For my next line, however, each one of these needs to be typed out specifically and something different for each one. So for gender, we'll hit a tab. I don't need this tab, so I'm going to get rid of it. I do need a tab, we'll say right about here. So male, and we'll tab over for female, and we'll tab over right about here for race. Check all that, apply. Going back to the next one, since we're moving over 2 of them, so I'll hit Tab, 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 American Indian. We'll set another tab. In this case, I'll let it be right here for Asian. And then we'll set another tab a little bit closer this time, Black or African American. Now that I've got all of these set up, we'll do Tab, 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 Islander, White, Other. Then I'll do a series of underscores for this one. And then finally I can move over and type out I choose not to share. Once I've got all of these on here, now I can go back and format it as necessary. I can highlight this and make it bold, same way for current grade, name of school, and gender, and even race. Everything else will remain exactly the same. And as far as the size of it goes, or the leading, I can space everything out to make sure it fits nicely within this area. If I need to change up some tabs, like down here, I think I can bring it in just a little bit more. I'm going to set this tab over just a little bit, move this part over. Now I can move all the races over and realign those to fit a little bit better as well. I do want to save some room to add a little checkbox beside each one of those. Again, adjusting my leading, give myself a little bit more room. Now that that's set, I can take this and pull it down to be centered better within my defined area. Now for this next one, in the payment, you'll notice that everything isn't necessarily lined up to the left-hand side like we're used to. Instead, everything is actually lining up to the little colons that are inside of this particular area. So to set these up, we're going to grab our type tool again. Let's create a new text box inside of the payment area. And before I get started, I'm also going to set my font to be Myriad Pro. In our case, I'll start off as Myriad Pro Bold, and the font size will be 10 point. And let's type out. I'm going to start off with the tab and do membership fee, colon, and then we can do the $ and a bunch of underscores for this one. Then we'll hit tab again. Let's do credit card information, colon, then hit tab again, card type, colon. When we select this and open up our tabs menu, the kind of tab that we want to set is this far one off to the side that says align to decimal. Now by default, it usually aligns to the decimal place like if it was with numbers. But in our case, we're going to change align on to be the colon symbol. So make sure that is selected along with your align to decimal. Now when you place this on here, you'll notice that your words are going to align up directly to that colon. Let's do the same for credit card information, and then finally to card type off to the side over here. Again, you may have to readjust it to make sure there's plenty of room. But now that those 3 different areas are set, aligning it to the colon, when we type out the rest of our information, we'll hit return, tab, donation colon, space, and we can do the underscores for this one, tab again. Actually, we need to hit tab twice because this will be a card number, colon, then space and a series of underscores, tab 3 times, this will be our expiration date, colon, then after that we can do this one. This will keep everything nice and aligned to there. The next thing we need to do is simply select it and unbold anything that shouldn't be bold, like the card number and the card type. And the final thing is to select all of this, and let's set the leading on this to be 25 points as well. With that done, we can close this out, and let's center it up into this particular area. Remember, we want to save some room to add a card type information to that particular side next to the card type. This next area is pretty straightforward, so we can grab our type tool, make a new text box. As with the other one, I'm going to set my font to be Myriad Pro Bold. Size of it's going to be 10. And what would you like to sell? Command B to swap back over to regular. Select all that, apply. I'll hit tab. I can even open up my tabs panel for now and scooch it over a bit. In our case, do make sure you've got the left align set again, and then let's bold it up. How did you hear about us? Command B, select all that, apply. With both of those set, you can then select your text and make sure it's nice and centered inside of there. But we do want to have some space below, but I think this looks pretty good for that one. That was a simple one. For this last section, you can copy and paste the information from the instruction panel. So I'm going to grab my type tool, create a new text box inside of this area, set our font to be Myriad Pro Bold, in our case actually Myriad Pro Regular. The size of this one, however, is going to be slightly different. We're going to set it to be 9 points, and when you paste in the information it'll look like that. Skip down, then we're going to let the last bit be bold, and the size of that is actually going to be much larger. I'm going to tab over a little bit. I give consent to the above statement. That's going to be nice and large so that stands out much different. Once we've finished up with all of the information for our information form, go back, preview everything, and make sure you've got plenty of room in between all of the spacing to add the proper information. If you need to, you can move things up or down, adjust your tabs spacing, and also adjust your alignment. When you are finished, let's return to our Layers panel, lock down our information layer, and create a new layer. This layer 3 is going to be our interactive layer. And say OK. all of the buttons and interactive elements will be added to this portion of our layer in our document. To add the interactive elements, I'm going to put my Layers panel back off to the side. Let's go up to Window, down to Interactive, and open up the Buttons and Forms panel. All of the magic is going to happen from this particular panel, and we need to make sure we've got the correct ones selected. So make sure this panel is open whenever we activate each of the different buttons. The first interactive element that we want to add is at the very top, creating a radio button to select between a new member or a returning member. So to do this, grab your ellipse tool from your tool panel, set your fill color to be none, and your stroke color to be black with a 1-point stroke. Hold down Shift as you click and drag to create a perfect circle next to the word New Member. With it still selected, let's open up our Buttons and Forms panel and choose the type of button to be a radio button. Whenever you do this, you'll notice that it automatically adds a little circle inside of your circled area. Now the thing about radio buttons is that every choice that you have needs to have the same name for the radio button. So in our case, let's change the name of it to Member Type. Also, for this option, the button values choice is going to be New Member. And we'll hit Return for that. To make a copy of this one, hold down Option as you click and drag. And notice now we've got a copy of one. The name of it is still going to be Member Type, but down at the very bottom, change this button value to Returning Member. Hit Return for that. With this done, we can test out our document. In order to test this, let's go up to File and down to Save and make a save already. Then we'll go to File and down to Export. Under the export settings, I'm going to choose my desktop just to know where it's going to be saved to. The format needs to be an Adobe PDF Interactive. Do make sure Interactive is selected in order for this to work. When you say Save, we can also say Export to these options because we're not going to change any up. This will open up your template in a Adobe Acrobat Pro, and now I can click on the individual parts and see how they operate, and that's the way it should be working. At any time, if you need to check and make sure your interactive elements are working, go ahead and save it up, export it, and then you can play around and test out the different parts. One thing to know, however, is make sure you close out your PDF. I'm not going to save it, because the next time you go to export it, you may want to save over it and start off fresh. Now let's add a text field so we can type in some information for our student information. Going over to our tool panel, choose the Rectangle Frame tool. Make sure your fill color and stroke color are both set to none, and then you can click and drag and create a simple text frame just large enough to type in your information. I like to use the rectangle frame because it also gives me the X and makes sure there's nothing inside of it. We don't want to be able to see this frame once it's on there. With it still selected, let's go to our Buttons and Forms. The type of button we're going to do is going to be a text field. As far as the name of it, you can name it whatever field that you're typing in. So make sure it's on top of the word, and I'll do this name as first name. With that done, we can hold down the Option key and click and drag and create a text field for the middle name. Again, once it's copied over, do middle name. Hold down Option, click and drag. Let's do one for the last name. Option, click and drag. Nudge it into place if necessary. With it still selected, it'll be a text frame for the address. Do go in order from left to right, then top to bottom. As you do that, when you press the Tab key, this will automatically select the correct next thing. So this will be our city. We'll set this one to be state. And finally one for the zip code. This one will be our home phone. And the final one, copying that over, is going to be our email address. Once we're done, this is a good time to save. So let's go up to File and Save and go on to the next part. As with the other one, the date of birth needs to be text fields by themselves. So let's click and drag, and we'll shorten up this text field. This first one will be the month. Next one will be the day. And the final one will be the year. While we're at it, we can also create a text field for the name of the school, and we'll stretch that one all the way out to the school name. All right. For the current grade, we want to have a drop-down listing of a variety of different grades to choose from. In order to do this, let's grab our rectangle frame again and click and drag and create a simple rectangle off to the side. With it selected, we'll set the fill color to be paper white. Now this kind of box, with it still selected, the button will be a combo box. With a combo box, we can type in a different combination or a different listing of different items. We're going to give it the name of current grade. And down at the very bottom, here's where we can type in our list items. So let's list out 3rd through 12th grade. So it'll be 3RD. Once you type in a list item, click the plus sign. You can see it's added down to the bottom, and do the same for each other grade. Now that it's done, you can see all of the different ones that are listed here below, and we can keep the font size at 12 for now. Once that's done, we can move on to the next section. In this one, we want the gender to have a selection, let's move over, a radio button selection between male or female. So as with the other one, let's get our regular ellipse tool, set the fill color to none and the stroke color to be black. Let's draw off a circle, place it next to male. Make sure it's set to black. With that one selected, turn on your button field, and let's choose a radio button. Name the radio button gender. This first selection is going to be male. Hold down Option as you click and drag next to female, and then change the button value to female. For the race section, we want to have a variety of different checkboxes that will allow us to check off multiple different options. So to do this, let's set our tool to be a regular rectangle tool with a fill color of none and a stroke of black. And let's click and drag, hold down your Shift key, and create a simple little square off to the side. With it still selected, under your buttons and forms, set the type of it to be a checkbox. Now the name of this checkbox is going to be race. And as far as the button value, you can set it to be American Indian for this one. With that one done, we can hold down Option and make a copy of it. We'll let the name be Race 1 for this one. It simply needs to be something different. However, we will change up the value of it to be something different for this one. In this case, Pacific Islander. Hold down Option, click and drag, do the next one. Notice as I make copies of each one of these, the number increases for the name. It really doesn't matter the order that you create these, but do make sure that they're lined up correctly. other, and I choose not to say. With that done, the last thing that we need to add for this area is another type or a text frame in case they type in something that's an other that they didn't specify. We can go up to File and Save, and let's move on to the next section. As with the others, we need to make a type field, so let's highlight this one, bring it over. This will be the membership fee. Do make sure it goes all the way to the end, and this will be for donation. The next field will allow us to add our credit card information. I'm going to go ahead and add the type fields for this one. So this will be the card number and the expiration date. Now, as far as the card type goes, again, this is where we need to have a combo box. So with this one, I'm going to choose my rectangle tool, click and drag. We'll set the stroke color to be none, but I'm going to set the fill color to be paper. With it selected, we'll set the type of it to be a combo box, and we need to type in the different kinds of credit cards that you can have. The name of it will be credit card. Under list item, it will be a Visa, MasterCard, Express, or ATM debit. We'll say OK to that. The best part about this is if you want them to be in alphabetical order, you can tell it to be sorted. That'll automatically put it from A to Z order in that one for there. With that done, we can move on to the next section, which will give us a variety of lists to choose from. For the items that we like to sell, we can select multiple different things from a list that's given. So to do this, let's grab our rectangle frame again. I'm going to click and drag and create a large rectangle just below it. We'll set this fill color to be paper white and a stroke of none. With it still selected, the type of button we want to use is a list box. And in this case, we can have a listing of multiple different things to pick and choose from. With it selected, we can list out all the different items. So it will be for coffee, donuts, or fruit. And we want to make multiple selections, so make sure multiple selection is set for this one. Also, let's increase our font size from 12 points to 13 points. Also, I noticed I forgot to add the name of it, and this will be What to Sell. For the next listing of box, we'll grab our rectangle again. Let's make one roughly the same size, a little bit larger, or a little bit longer. We'll set the fill color to be paper, the stroke color to be none, and with it still selected, let's choose a list box for this one. And this will be how did they hear from us? How to hear. The options for this will also let it be a multiple selection. And the first one was radio, school, friend, television, or magazine. We'll add it to that as well, keeping the font size right at 12 so that it fits nicely within that area. The final area that's down here is we want to have a large check that's a different color. So to create it, grab your rectangle frame tool. Let's create a large area for now, and we'll keep the fill color at none and the stroke color to be black. With it still selected, let's make the type be a checkbox again. This time, notice that the appearance has normal selected for this one. With that done, choose your white arrow direct selection tool, click once inside on the check, With it selected, go up to the very top of your colors and let's change it to a different color. In our case, we'll turn it to be red, and let's get rid of the stroke outline and set that to be none. Now when it's checked, it'll be a nice red check that's inside of it. Now the final thing we want to do is add 2 buttons to this open field down at the very bottom to both print and to clear our entire form. To do this, let's grab our Type tool. Let's create a text box down here at the very bottom. Inside of this first one, I'm going to hit Clear Form. We'll highlight this. I'm going to center it up inside of here. Again, open up our Object, Text Frame Options. Let's do a vertical alignment into the center as well. I'm going to make it nice and large. And as far as the color of our text box, let's set that to be something like an orange. That looks good for that one, maybe even the lighter orange. I'm also going to set my font color to be white or paper. In keeping with the other themes, we're going to let that be Myriad Pro Bold. With it selected, the type of button we want to have here will be a simple button. With that button, we want to trigger an event or an action once we click on it. So under the actions, we'll hit plus, and in our case, we want to clear the form. Now whenever they click on this button, it'll completely clear away and give us a fresh form each time. Let's make another button off to this side. Grab our Type tool, we'll click and drag, make it relatively the same size, and this one will say Print Form. We'll highlight that, center it up, open up our frame options, center that as well. We'll make it a little bit larger, change our font to Myriad Pro Bold. I'm going to set my type color to be paper. And as far as my frame color, I'm going to let that one be a bright yellow. Actually, let's go ahead and make it paper white. I'm going to let my type color be red. That way it looks nice and different. For this one, once it's selected, set your type to be a button, and we're going to trigger an action, in this case to print the form, once it's clicked on and selected as well. Now that we're done, we can back out. Let's get rid of our membership application area, so I'm going to unlock my information. Unlock my background area, get rid of that. We can save it up, and let's test our application. Go up to File, down to Export. Again, make sure you have an Adobe PDF Interactive selected. We can say Save and Export, and this will open up our new form field. Now I can go through and click on the different buttons. I can type in my name, test out each of the form fields. I can choose a grade level that I want from the drop-down. I can check on each different area. I can even choose my credit card type. I can choose from a variety of different things from these areas. If I need more, I can hold down Command or Shift. If I click there, it gives me a red X. If I click down at the very bottom, I can clear the form. Everything resets back to normal. Or if I click Print Form, this should open up my print dialog box, and so I can send it to our printer. I'm not going to do that for now. Once you're finished, save up this InDesign file, and this InDesign file is what you'll upload to Moodle for your grade.